A sweeping antitrust lawsuit against Apple. The DOJ alleges that Apple has monopoly power in the smartphone market, how it's accused of hurting competitors. President Biden canceling another round of student loans totaling about $6 billion. Find out which group qualifies this time. A race against time on Capitol Hill as lawmakers unveil the second and final government funding package. What still needs to happen this week to avoid a partial shutdown? Republican senators again trying to pass the Laken-Riley Act, named after a nursing student killed in Georgia. How they're now attempting to use government funding bills to pass the immigration law. The Biden administration sets ambitious auto emissions goals, aiming to slash carbon emissions by billions of tons. Will electric vehicles dominate the roads by 2032? We'll get insights from an automotive expert. Nuclear energy could be making a comeback in Europe. Find out more about EU leaders' discussions at a summit in Brussels today. NTD's France correspondent brings us the latest on that. Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Stephanie Cox. The Department of Justice and 15 states, plus D.C., are suing Apple. They accuse the company of illegally monopolizing the smartphone market.
Apple charges as much as nearly $1,600 for an iPhone. But as our complaint alleges, Apple has maintained monopoly power in the smartphone market not simply by staying ahead of the competition on the merits, but by violating federal antitrust law. Consumers should not have to pay higher prices because companies break the law.
The long-anticipated lawsuit comes after years of allegations that Apple is harming competition and app developers. The suit centers on restrictive App Store terms and high fees. It also says Apple tightly controls how third-party tech companies interact with its products and services. Apple says the rules are for privacy and security. But critics say it purposefully makes compatibility with other tech difficult for users in order to maintain a monopoly. Concerns span from how it handles news services, blocking digital wallets on iPhones, making messaging with Android less functional, and making its Apple Watch only compatible with iPhones. The strategy has helped make Apple the world's most prosperous company, with annual revenue of nearly $400 billion and, until recently, a market value of more than $3 trillion. Lawmakers introduced a $1.2 trillion spending package that sets the stage for avoiding a partial government shutdown. The funding would allow Congress to fund the government through September. NTD's Arlene Richards has the latest.
This year's spending bills were divided into two packages. Congress passed the first one 2 weeks ago, just hours before a shutdown deadline. Now Congress is focused on the second, larger package. House Speaker Mike Johnson promoted the bill as a serious commitment to strengthening national defense. The bill includes about $886 billion for the Defense Department, about a 3% increase from last year. The legislation also provides a 5.2% pay increase for service members. The package also funds Homeland Security, Health and Human Services, Labor, and other departments. It also increases humanitarian aid overall, while Republicans insisted on cutting off funding for the UN Relief and Works Agency. Dozens of agency employees were allegedly involved in October 7th Hamas terror attacks in Israel. The House is expected to vote on Friday. Then it would move to the Senate. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
And President Biden announced today his administration is canceling another $6 billion in student loans. The latest group includes 78,000 public service workers, including teachers, nurses, firefighters, and more. This group qualifies under the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program created in 2007 to forgive student debt for those going into public service. The latest move brings the Biden administration's total student debt cancellation to $144 billion for about 4 million Americans. An additional 380,000 borrowers who may be eligible for debt relief within the next 1 or 2 years. We'll also be getting emails from Biden. Biden is seeking re-election in November and needs the youth vote to help him win. Critics have accused the president of trying to buy votes with debt cancellation. And the Laken Riley Act, named after a Georgia nursing student allegedly killed by an illegal immigrant. Senate Republicans are once again trying to pass the bill. This time they're using a new method tied to government funding bills. NTD's Dave Martin has more.
We're going to try again.
Senate Republicans on Thursday said they're launching a second attempt at passing the Laken Riley Act.
The House passed this bill earlier this month with the support of 37 Democrats. Senate Democrats blocked me from passing the Laken Riley Act in the Senate last week.
The bill would require ICE to detain illegal immigrants charged with theft. Before allegedly killing Riley, her suspected murderer was charged with shoplifting in New York City, but ICE did not detain him.
Had New York City put him in jail, that murderer would not have been in Georgia to beat Laken Riley to death.
The law would also allow states to sue the federal government if it doesn't enforce certain aspects of immigration law. Republican senators now want to include the Laken Riley Act as an amendment to the spending bills they'll vote on this week. And new data shows that judges dismissed 200,000 immigration cases because the Biden administration didn't file paperwork correctly. That's according to an academic group called the Transactional Records Access Clearinghouse. The group says that Homeland Security didn't submit documents to courts after processing illegal immigrants at the border. This is Dave Martin for NTD News.
A major charter bus company has agreed to stop busing illegal immigrants to the New York City area until a civil lawsuit is concluded. Roadrunner Charters was one of the bus companies that took part in Texas Governor Greg Abbott's strategy to send migrants to sanctuary cities. New York City filed a civil lawsuit against 17 bus companies in December, seeking to recoup money spent providing housing and care to the illegal immigrants. The suit asked at least $708 million total from all the bus companies. At least as of December last year, Texas has spent more than 33,000 illegal immigrants to New York City since the spring of 2022. That's according to the New York City Mayor's office. And new rules for auto emission standards unveiled by the Biden administration yesterday. According to the Environmental Protection Agency, the aggressive plan would avoid more than 7 billion tons of carbon emissions over the next 30 years. The EPA believes the auto industry can meet the goal limits if more than half of new vehicle sales are electric by 2032. So what is the future of the auto industry? Joining us now is an automotive expert from Car Coach Reports, Lauren Fix. Lauren, great to speak with you. How is this going to affect the auto industry, do you think?
Oh, it's going to affect them, and it's going to affect everybody. So the cost of vehicles are going to get more expensive. As of right now, the average loss on every single electric vehicle is between $6,000 and $40,000 loss on every electric vehicle that's being sold. So car manufacturers are not making a profit. They can try to offset it on other things, but even Tesla doesn't make money on the sale of their vehicles. They make it by selling the carbon credits to companies that can't meet the carbon emission standards. And this is going to be a problem because as you add more things into the cost of a vehicle, including kill switches, which was part of the Infrastructure Act, more safety standards, more emissions, and higher regulations, that means the cost of vehicles are going to get really expensive, which also means your insurance rates are going to go up with it.
And you're talking all types of cars, electric and non-electric, is that correct?
Everything is going to get more expensive because if you're taking a loss on one vehicle, you have to offset that by increasing the profit margin on the other vehicles to try to offset the difference. That's why someone, for example, like Ford, they take a loss on every F-150 Lightning, but they've increased the price of their regular F-150, whether it be gasoline, diesel, or hybrid. This is the problem. And so they have to make money in order to obviously stay in business, but also pay their employees, create new products, and continue to promote the products that they have. And that all comes down to you paying a higher price.
And looking now at the infrastructure that has also come under the microscope since this effort to increase the EVs, could the current infrastructure, do you think, support the charging needs of all the electric cars, of some of them which will be all electric, especially
There's
if
no
more...
way.
No. Okay.
No, I know there's no way. We've already been down this road. We've already learned that the infrastructure cannot support what we have. We'd have to update the whole infrastructure. In order to do the whole country, it would take decades. We're not even close to that. And the money that's been set aside in order to build charging stations, billions of dollars, I believe it was $8 billion in the last bill that was passed, they've only built one charging station. So where is the money going? Well, there's a lot of regulations and a lot of rules that make it extremely difficult for anyone who wants to invest in putting up charging stations to make that pass. So this is a big problem. If we have more regulations, we have more money being poured into it, it doesn't make sense. To give you an example, when cell phones were built, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, they all put up towers, and then they made an agreement amongst themselves that you could use all the different towers. Well, in the case of charging stations, they're not letting the free market reign. What they're doing is the government's going to control all these charging stations, and we know they can't even handle Amtrak and the post office, and the result of it is they're not having great success with this, just like anything else that they control.
Yeah, and so considering all of these challenges heading into this new area, we really don't know how this will pan out. But for people who are looking ahead and wanting to prepare, what do you recommend?
Well, we do know there's an election coming up. And so depending upon who the next president is, and that's very hard to predict, if it's President Trump, then he's going to remove all these mandates and let you make the choice whether you want gas or hybrid or plug-in hybrid or electric. Those choices should be available. If President Biden gets reelected, well, you know, he's going to put the foot down on the gas pedal, the electric gas pedal, and they're going to really make it painful for everyone who owns a gasoline-powered vehicle by increasing the taxes, adding by-the-mile charges, and making gasoline way more expensive. Right now, they've been dumping the strategic oil preserves, lowering the price of fuel. That will only last so long because those preserves have not been refilled. And if we have a problem of any type, whether it be weather or otherwise, we're not going to have fuel when we really truly need it. And electricity, that can't be relied on either because, again, you're relying on wind and solar, which is their plan. And that's going to lead to a lot of issues because it can only support 18% of our needs. Nuclear power would be a great solution. I know that Europe's looking at that, and you're going to be discussing that next. But this is really important to note that if we are not being proactive and putting up some form of getting power, there's not going to be enough forget about the electric cars, for us in general.
Yeah, much to think about there, and I'm sure some plans to be made. Thank you so much. Lauren Fix, automotive expert from Car Coach, reports. And the FDA is alerting Americans about quality concerns with plastic syringes from China. The agency urges a shift away from certain brands. It says the issues include leaking and breaking, as well as some other problems stemming from changes to the syringe's sizes. The defects make the syringe not functional and unsafe because they might deliver the wrong medication doses. The FDA says the problems with plastic syringes manufactured in China are more widespread than initially understood. The agency now advises against using syringes from Jiangsu China Medical Company and is unauthorizing those from Jiangsu Senli Medical Production Company. U.S. military leaders say Israel doesn't have a civilian protection plan yet for its upcoming ground operation in Rafah. But General Michael Kurilla, commander of U.S. Central Command, says he does believe Israel is doing its best to avoid killing civilians, and that it holds itself to high ethical standards and does not intentionally target civilians.
What they've told me is they are not going to take action until they have the ability to protect the civilians and move them out of the area. I don't think they have finalized the plan for that. Until they do, I am not aware of their current plans to be able to do the civilian harm mitigation for Rafah. I think they're very conscious of the civilian harm. We talk about it every time I talk to my counterpart. We talk about that. What I am trying to do, though, is help alleviate some of the human suffering there, and that's coming either through, we just did an airborne operation of aid this morning. We've approached now almost 1 million meals in the north with 8 other countries. We're also working to increase the land line of communication to bring some in.
Other generals reiterated that while Israel avoids killing civilians, Hamas uses them as shields. They supported Israel's right to defend itself and said that the war could end today if Hamas returned the hostages today. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu could address Congress soon. The House Speaker, Mike Johnson, says he will extend an invitation after members of his conference encouraged him to do so. Johnson also revealed he had been invited by Netanyahu to speak at the Knesset. His predecessor, Kevin McCarthy, addressed the Knesset while he was Speaker. Coming up, nuclear energy could be making a comeback in Europe. Find out more about EU leaders' discussions at a summit in Brussels today. NTD's France correspondent brings us the latest. A solution to space junk. A British company is aiming to fix this decades-long problem that's growing ever worse. Find out what their special tool is, that and more, after the break.
First time I came in here was Monday, and today is Thursday.
And other streaming platforms.
When I drink it, the first thing was I feel the warmth in my tummy. It's kind of like gently radiating out, a kind of a very comforting warmth. And it was really good, actually. I felt much better. I did feel, actually, an effect. And I find that it is actually better when I take it regularly.
It's actually steamed and dried 9 times, and so it's really, the essence is really extracted.
Then the second time I tried it really like on an empty stomach and just 2 teaspoons of it, and over a few times. And wow, there was a big difference, because suddenly I could feel, wow, I was very good energized. I didn't have to eat. I could work outside in the garden for a couple of hours, and I still felt very well. And I was impressed by that. So I think it's a good product.
European Union leaders gathered at a summit in Brussels today to advocate for a nuclear energy revival. This comes after recent developments in 4th-generation nuclear power plants. Supporters say the technology could bring about a more stable, clean, and safe source of energy. NTD's France correspondent David Vivas has more.
Leaders from pro-nuclear European countries and energy experts convene in Brussels on Thursday to advocate for a revival of nuclear energy. The nuclear industry has been in decline for years in Europe, with the portion decreasing in the electricity mix. However, its resurgence would contribute to Europe's ambitious climate targets, as nuclear has recently been labeled as a green energy source by the EU Commission.
But I am here because I believe that in countries that are open to the technology, nuclear technology can play an important role in the clean energy transition.
The European Commission's Industrial Alliance on Small Modular Reactors underscores the continent's commitment to advancing nuclear technology. These represent a leap forward in nuclear technology, offering enhanced safety features, increased efficiency, and reduced environmental impact.
Fourth-generation nuclear power uses nuclear waste to make energy again, degrading these atoms into isotopes that are much more stable and therefore much less polluting. What's more, it guarantees cheap and abundant energy for 60, 70, 80 years, and even perhaps 100 years.
Some startups in Europe specializing in fourth-generation mini-reactors are pooling their resources to compete with established nuclear heavyweights. Nucleo, a UK-based company, and Neria, a French firm, collaborate to address key areas such as the fuel cycle, financing, research, and industrial development. However, the sector lacks investments and hardly matches the funding granted to renewable energies by the EU. According to author Nicolas Desprats, nuclear energy development in Europe has been undermined by powerful lobbies of renewables.
The German energy lobby, sponsored from afar by American foundations and companies, is torpedoing all these projects precisely to maintain the exploitation of LNG gas, which comes from the USA. Unfortunately, these attempted investments are taken down by the German energy lobby for geopolitical and economic reasons.
France, joined by 15 other EU nations within the Nuclear Alliance, voiced its endorsement for the construction of an estimated 30 to 45 large-scale reactors by 2050. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
Apple CEO Tim Cook is hoping to charm China amid slowing iPhone sales. Today, the company is opening an enormous new flagship store in the country. Here's NTD's Don Ma with today's business brief.
Thank you very much, Steph. So first off, Apple CEO Tim Cook is making a very high-profile visit to Shanghai as part of today's opening of an enormous new flagship store. And this is as the iPhone maker makes a deeper push into its biggest international market amid declining sales in China. Now, the new $11.6 million store is located in Shanghai's Central District and is the biggest in China and the second largest globally after the one in New York's Fifth Avenue. This is according to Chinese state media reports. And Cook said, "Nong hao Shanghai," in a Weibo post yesterday, which means hello in Shanghainese. He says, "I'm always so happy to be back in this remarkable city." In Shanghai, Apple now has 8 stores, and this is the largest number of any city in the country. There are currently 47 Apple stores in 24 cities across China, and this new addition comes as Apple tries very hard to fend off competitors, Chinese ones, to revive sales in a rocky market with growing headwinds. And these headwinds range from an economic slowdown to geopolitical tensions and rising nationalist sentiment. And all this comes amid businesses struggling to navigate the growing uncertainty in China, meanwhile with drastic changes in recent years. Meanwhile, the European Union is anticipating China pricing them out of manufacturing. That's because China dominates affordable manufacturing. Chinese authorities have pushed for more high-end manufacturing to boost self-sufficiency in the tech sector and to wean away from its crumbling real estate market. Companies in China have been met with threats of raids and intensified espionage laws, which has essentially made everyday business activity illegal there. The European Union Chamber of Commerce is urging Chinese leaders to address these concerns that have grown exponentially in recent years. Wall Street has taken notice of the uncertainty and increased risk of doing business in China. Goldman Sachs' chief investment officer has outright said one should not invest in China. That's all from me today. Back to you, Steph.
Great, thanks, Don. Next up, the IRS may be using artificial intelligence to spy on Americans. House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan is launching an investigation into the concern. The Ohio Congressman and fellow Republican Harriet Hageman sent letters to Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen and Attorney General Merrick Garland informing them of the probe. The IRS said in a September 2023 press release that it would be employing AI to crack down on tax evasion. Jordan and Hageman pointed to a report from James O'Keefe Media Group. According to the report, the IRS is also using AI to surveil citizens' bank accounts, quote, en masse and without legal process. Trash floating around the Earth's orbit is becoming a growing problem. A new company called Astroscale has a solution to catch old satellites and other space junk. Let's take a look at what may be the future of space trash removal.
The UK company aims to solve a decades-long problem that's getting worse. At stake are billions of dollars in assets. This includes orbital devices crucial to navigation and smartphone maps, text messaging, calls, and internet connections used by people globally.
Space debris is a big problem for all of us on Earth. Basically, since the start of the space age in 1957, we've had a throwaway culture in space. We've put lots of objects in space, and we've basically not removed them. We've not recycled them or done anything else.
The sheer size of the problem is quite surprising.
So there's 10,000 tons of debris in space, near 40,000 objects, all floating around in different orbits.
The possible dangers to people in orbit is even more concerning.
Another big risk is human risk. We have quite a few astronauts in orbit now. There's going to be more commercial space stations planned over the next few years.
How does the process of removing space junk work?
We're using a robot arm to capture the space object in question and then bring it close and then bring it down to a lower orbit and then release it so it can burn up in the atmosphere. And we've removed that debris object then.
Nick Shave expects the technology to be ready to go in 2 or 3 years. Astroscale is also looking at refueling satellites while they're still in space. Now, when a satellite runs out of fuel, its mission is over. But the company is trying to change that with the Cosmic Service or Spacecraft project. It would be able to refuel satellites and give them a new lease on life.
Thank you for watching NTD Newsroom. I'm Stephanie Cox. We'll have more stories from the U.S. and around the world. Join Tiffany Meyer for the NTD Evening News at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 Pacific.